I am making here a drawing of The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Johannes Vermeer, one of my favorite painters, and I just finished this drawing and I'm recording some comments afterwards. I just put some accentuations here and there on the paper. This is actually not the best way to start such a drawing, I think, but I just had fun trying it to do this way, putting certain details here and there, and later on I will correct some of these a little bit. I think that white color wasn't placed properly, but the rest was okay. So I'm starting with some shadowing. In the early stage I always want to get the eyes positioned. Adding shadows here and there. The turban. She's actually very exotically dressed for the time. I think she wears a Turkish dress, as it was called in those days. So Vermeer was quite international with this at that time already. Now some accentuation for the pearl. Some quite forceful accentuations there. And it's fun to draw the black as well, and I like the way that the ballpoint is going over the paper. It rolls really, really nicely. I had fun using ballpoint in this drawing, so I might use ballpoint more. I like these very accessible materials actually. I'm adding tonal values. I find tonal values very important to have a certain area which stays light, but other areas which are slightly darker. So the other cheek. So you have the cheek on the left, which is very light, and the other cheek is a little bit darker. So it's important to get that difference in the drawing. Getting the line of her face right. It can be quite difficult to get such a line right to define her face. Some accentuations in the mouth. With this kind of drawing you cannot really be very detailed, but I try to put some accentuations at the right place. I really enjoyed those hatchings. How the ballpoint goes over the paper. And it's just a quick little sketch, and that gives a certain freedom when you consider what you do as a quick sketch. You think, oh well, it doesn't matter anyway, so so you have a certain freedom to do things. And sometimes your best drawings can originate from such a attitude. And I'm hatching in several directions. You can call it cross-hatching. I'm not a very disciplined cross-hatcher, as you can see. My hatchings go in all directions, which I find yeah, I really like the variation of it. Let me put it that way. Adding shadow in the clothing. So her face is quite defined now, but I want to add tonal values in the surrounding areas of the clothing, the background. But it has to maintain the character. It has to have the character of a sketch. So to what extent do you actually work such a drawing out in certain aspects? Accentuations here and there, trying to get the eyes more expressive, trying to get even certain line in the eyelashes. She doesn't really have eyelashes, but there's this dark line on top of her eye. And here and there hatchings, adding some tonal value, going through the whole drawing, refining her face a bit. I think I made it a little bit too dark here. But I'm not sure. I think I went a little too dark, a little too crude, so have to work on that later on a bit. The moment that you realize, oh, and when you make such a drawing and you make a certain area darker, then that area is perhaps too dark in relation to the other areas, so you have to adjust the other areas as well. So one has to watch out how dark you go with a certain shadow or something, because you can give yourself a lot of extra work that way, because every other part has to be in relation to that part also dark or something. Sometimes one has to watch out in a drawing in that regard. My reproduction of the painting of Vermeer wasn't complete on the right side, so I miss a little bit of the turban there. But I wasn't making a total copy. It wasn't my intention anyway. Working on her clothing. Another hatching in another direction. I like to vary the direction of hatchings. If you have a very dominant first hatching, then it's nice to have a hatching over that in an opposite direction, like here. There. That's in a richer structure now already, and I can make it darker there. And now I'm filling the background more. There's this clair obscure effect, this light and dark effect of her face. I go on hatching, more hatching, and even more hatching, getting it darker. And this is a sort of color copy paper, which I really like because it's very strong. If I would do this on regular printer paper, the printer paper would be unworkable by now in some areas. So I'm going to look up which paper it was, and I'm going to put it under the video in the description for those who are interested. Adding some accentuations in the eye. Sometimes a few dots can make it more expressive. Make it dark with the turban. Working on the background. And I'm adjusting the form of the turban a bit and the tonal values. Because they were still white in certain areas and only the color and parts of her face stay white. Actually, when you take into account the whiteness of her color, I'm going quite forcefully there. But if you take into account the whiteness of her color, her lighted lid part of her face should be slightly darker as that as well. So maybe next time I try that too. Adding some tonal value in her face. Sometimes you forget a part, and then later on in the drawing you see that line, that the delineation of the shadow was too sharp, so I wanted to soften that a bit. Adding some tonal value in the light part of her face. Compared to her eyes and the color, the whole of her lid part of the face should be slightly darkened, but I didn't do that in this case. And it just depends what kind of drawing one is making, whether you do that or not. Trying to copy a little bit of the brushstrokes in the turban. The lapis lazuli turban by Vermeer. Well, what shall I do? Some more hatching. And I thought that the form of those hatchings followed her figure a bit too much, so I wanted the background on the left to have another form, which is a bit independent from the form of the figure of the girl with the pearl earring. So I'm not going to draw it totally black, but it seemed to follow a little bit her outline. And so I wanted to break that a bit. And now it's finished. I consider it finished. Yep. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel if you like these kind of videos. Oops, a little bit more. Sometimes you see that you consider it as being finished and still you want to add some more accentuations all of a sudden. Sometimes you need to rest a bit when you have been very actively drawing, and then when you have calmed down a bit you can add some subtle changes from a different mood, and that's it. Thank you.